Okay, take two of this time without me recording a silent video. Um, okay, so this is for Dune and for anybody else who is looking to um, look at unit balance. So normally inside your game install folder, wherever that is, there's a player data folder. When you run the game, it will create this CSV file right here. Um, in the case of right this second, I have to email those to Dune since he can't launch a live version of the game that has the proper stats. When you open that, it comes up in Excel or OpenOffice or whatever, and this has a variety of data in it that is exported based on what the game has read in from the XML files that actually store the root data and then what it's calculated. And right now, this is what we've got. So the internal name is what you can find in the XML in order to locate it. The display name is, in case you can't tell what it is based off the internal name, that's what we show to the users in the front end. Starting mark is what the first mark level is that it can be. That's mark 0 for things that are markless that never change. They're just the way that they are. So those are sometimes very powerful, sometimes not. Then you've got things that actually increase in mark, which can go from 1 to 7. 6 and 7 are insane and well above what you would normally run into, which is mark 5 at the top, like in AI War 1. Um, there are a few things that start out at a higher mark because they're only used in that particular fashion in the game. Um, for these, some of them have a flag on them that says, like, don't multiply my numbers. Let's see here. Does not use multipliers from mark level. So with that, that basically means that the mark 3 is just um, a visual indicator of general difficulty of the thing, and the numbers that are set in here are meant to be taken pretty literally. So the shot damage amount that it has, for instance, is going to be the amount of damage that it does, period. Um, for anything else, at Mark 1, it does the shot damage for Mark 0, as the case may be. Mark 2, it does shot damage times like 2, I think, something like that. And it's a pretty sharp increase at Mark 2 and then gets less of an increase as you go upwards. And so um, the max mark level shows you how high it can go. Mostly that's all the way to 7, but on some things it's a lower number. The hull amount is basically the hit points. When that goes to 0, it's dead. Unlike in some prior versions of this game, this hull number is a literal number. So it's not like the whole number per number of ships in the squad or sub squads or something like that. None of that stuff. It's just this is the number. When this gets to 0, the ship or squad, as the case may be, is dead. This number also gets higher as the mark level goes up. There are shields, which are the exact same thing as hull health, except that when the shield numbers are when the shields are damaged, they all get damaged first normally. Then if you're not being shot in a while, then the shields automatically regen back up for free, or engineers can repair them for money, for metal. And there are certain things, though, that do more damage against shields or that can bypass shields entirely. You'll notice that most structures have a lot of shields but very little health. And those are things that are going to be weak to bombers, which the bomber, one of its special abilities is firing through personal shields and just completely ignoring them. There are also bubble shields, the big bubble force fields. So you have like the shield generator, I guess it is, shield starship shield generator. And those have a ridiculous amount of shield health because they're meant to absorb damage on a bunch of things they're, protecting. So they need a lot of health in order to do that. Base squad cap, how many ships there can be that the player can build at the first mark level. For starships, that's typically one, and then they get another one as they upgrade to Mark II, and another one as they upgrade to Mark III. So the starships are far less plentiful than in the first game, but are much, much bigger and meant to be more individually threatening. It's something that differentiates them more from the squads of individual smaller ships. The smaller ships start out with like 20, then they go up to like 40, then like 70, something like that. And we'll probably play with those numbers. Base metal is how much metal cost it takes to build one of those things. This is not used by AIs, only by players. Energy usage, same deal, only by players. Science cost, only by players, and it's based on kind of categories, so it's really not relevant here. Base strength is not something we're using right now, but will be calculated later as a kind of reference for how strong something turned out to be based on all its attributes. The shot damage start is a very literal number in the XML. Looking at a system, you'll see damage per shot. It's that number, literally. And these numbers, I went through an XML export and import process that I apparently kind of botched with how I was exporting the numbers because they're insane and don't make a whole lot of sense. You have things like the Devour Golem doing 192,000 damage per shot, which even just a couple of shots of that will eat an AI home command station, which is not appropriate. I mean, they're supposed to be big eaters, but not to that degree. And then you've got things like the fighters and bombers, which have like 24 damage on the fighter, and the bomber does 76 damage with health and shields of like 2,500 plus 600 here on the bomber. That is 3,100 health total damage that they could absorb. And if they're dealing 76 damage that was, let's say it was absorbed by shields as well, that's 3,100 health divided by 76 damage. And these things take 12, they only fire one salvo every 12 seconds. So their DPS is therefore 6.33. So that would be 3,100 divided by 6.33 is how many seconds it would take for one bomber to kill one other bomber, or them to kill each other. And that's obviously ridiculously unacceptable. And it's some very high number. It should be more like 10 seconds. So it would be like 3,100 divided by 10 times 12, and that would be roughly your, shot damage that you would roughly want. The cap DPS shows you what the total DPS is per the entire cap, and so that lets you compare something like all the bombers versus a starship, which can be kind of useful. And those should be roughly equivalent, like all the bombers versus starship should be similar numbers. That said, that may not quite work out because might make it so that the starships have just way too much DPS where they just kind of insta-kill a lot of things. If that's the case, then we'll just rely on special abilities more for starships, which is kind of where I want them to head anyway. They're kind of force multipliers and so on. But that's the concept anyway. For these numbers, there's a bunch of various bonuses and so forth, which are going to be coming, which are not shown here, with things like shooting through shields or getting a damage bonus for shields or damage penalty against shields or, whatever. And what I'm just kind of looking for, though, is kind of sane numbers to start out with for these, which puts most combat in, roughly 10 seconds or so for two evenly matched things to kill one another. And for things that are, extra strong, it's just kind of a general ballpark guess right now for things like the Dyson Sphere. I mean, they should come in and, wreck the home command, I guess, in like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that versus two shots. And some of these things do more damage than that. But once these things are actually set up, or, once you figure out values that make sense, then it's a matter of going into your install folder, looking in game data, configuration, game entity, and then there's a variety of XML files in here, and they each have a variety of ships in them. With this is the internal name right here, the entity name. Then underneath that, they have a system, and they have the damage per shot in there. They have other things as well. The formatting is wonky right now in terms of how things are tabbed, but yeah. So, um, so that is things for now. Thanks.